Let's talk about pet allergies. Today we're going to focus on cats and dogs because these are very common. There's going to be some really interesting points I'm going to make, so I hope you stick around. Let's get into it. Okay, so cat allergies. This is one of the most common indoor allergies. You can find this allergy coming from the saliva, the hair, skin, anal glands. A lot of this is the hair and saliva. Now the culprit of this allergy is a protein called FELD1. Now this is a protein right here. This structure is what causes an allergic reaction. So the immune system is very complex. So here what happens is these cells will consume this protein and present what's called an antigen. Now this is a little piece of the enemy, I guess, at least in this case, this protein. And when it's presented, it causes this very interesting chain reaction that causes the immune system to take action. And this is an allergic reaction. So these cells called mast cells are the big culprit here. They're present in all kinds of places: the skin, lungs, GI system, gastrointestinal system, mouth, eyes, and nose. So oftentimes when we have allergic reactions, they are present in these areas. So when these cells are activated, it produces the reaction. So you can expect swollen, red, itchy, watery eyes, coughing, sneezing, wheezing, asthma, all of these being symptoms of functioning immune system, but symptoms that you don't really want. It's important to note that mast cells are also the reason why there's arthritis, nut allergies, bee stings, and all sorts of other allergic reactions. In doing my research, I found a couple things. Washing doesn't help, at least it doesn't provide a permanent solution. It is good to wash your animals consistently, especially if you have an allergy. But here are some of the important details. The reduction in FELD1 takes place within about 2 days, but then it comes back to normal levels. And while this protein is reduced, after about 24 hours, it's airborne again. And more males than females have FELD1. So you'll find this protein in greater amounts in males. So let's get into dogs. This allergen is found in the hair, dander, and saliva, the hair being a big portion. What's interesting is that this is found in all homes with dogs and about 1/3 of homes without dogs. It's a very, very interesting point. The culprit is a protein called CANF1, and this causes the allergic reaction in a similar way that the cat allergen does. What I found here, this is an interesting point, half of those allergic have an exclusive antibody against CANF1, as in their immune system is exclusively aware of CANF1 being an enemy. So most people, when they come into contact with something like this, their immune system will adjust. But what's interesting, like I mentioned, half already have this built-in recognition of this protein. This has resulted in an increase in severity of asthma symptoms in children and adults. And as far as the allergic reaction, is relatively similar to cats: swollen, red, itchy, watery eyes, coughing, wheezing, asthma, and you also get contact dermatitis. I talked about this in my video on urushiol, but this is what happens when you maybe rub against poison oak or poison ivy. That skin gets inflamed, itchy, painful. This is a 3D model of, well, one of these is CANF1. There's a bunch of them. I didn't mention this with cats. Both of these allergens, there's a few different types, but these two are the main culprits for allergic reactions. Lastly, I want to talk about this idea of a pet being hypoallergenic. In my research, which was surprising, I found out there are no true hypoallergenic dogs and cats. As in, there is no true dog or cat that you can have that dramatically reduces your allergic symptoms. There's not really any research data that supports this. You know, the varying levels of these proteins do differ, but you're not really going to find a breed that completely removes that allergy, at least from the research. In the Journal of Feline Medicine and Surgery, there was a really interesting study done. They studied about 64 cats and took samples twice daily every day for a year. And they found some really fascinating pieces of data. The amount of FELD1 ranges from the morning to the evening, from month to month, season to season. In other words, the biology and the presentation of this protein is always changing. But what they did find is that there's really no point in which you can expect enough FELD1 to not cause an allergic reaction. All of these cats had an amount that caused a reaction. Again, statistically, it wasn't significant. There are also no hypoallergenic cats. They don't really exist. There is research being done on CRISPR, which is the molecular machinery used to knock out certain genes. Now there needs to be a lot of study on this because sometimes you'll have a protein, for example, let's say FELD1, you'll have a protein you could knock out or gene you could knock out, but then you realize that this gene is also responsible for maybe like kidney function or something random. Because of this, you want to make sure that if you're knocking out a gene, it's not going to dramatically reduce the quality of life for the animal. So let's go to dogs. There's a couple studies that I read. Nicholas et al., Vredigur et al. I just want to mention, I didn't get the official authorship title, so I just titled the first author's last name with the usual research abbreviations. So they studied hypoallergenic dogs versus control being dogs that weren't hypoallergenic. The first study showed that there was actually a higher amount of CAN-F1 in hypoallergenic dogs. This is really interesting, but it's also important to know that there is no difference in exposure. As in, just because these dogs had more of this protein, it didn't mean that they were more likely to cause an allergic reaction. And then the second study was done, it resulted in no difference in exposure. So the whole point is that there's really no difference between a dog that's hypoallergenic and a dog that's not hypoallergenic. The only way to really manage this is to limit where these animals go, limit the spaces they find themselves in. So you don't want your animal to be in bedrooms and things like that. Get a nice HEPA filter to filter out those allergens, and then contact your local doctor, your local allergist to get treatment like nasal spray and all kinds of other stuff. Let's get into the summary to review what we learned. First, we talked about cats. They have this protein called FELD1 that causes an allergic reaction. These mast cells are activated. They're present in all sorts of areas of the body. You can expect swollen, red, itchy, watery eyes, coughing, sneezing, asthma, and all sorts of other things. Then we talked about dogs. They have this protein called CAN-F. Then we talked about dogs. They have this protein called CAN-F1 that produces an allergic reaction. You can expect swollen, red, itchy, watery eyes, coughing, asthma, and contact dermatitis. Then we closed out with this interesting information that there are no true hypoallergenic dogs and cats. We reviewed the data. Although this cat data was very small sample size, it did result in a real-world understanding of FELD1 ranges. Then we got into these two dog studies and we found that there's really no difference between hypoallergenic dogs and non-hypoallergenic dogs. They still cause an allergic reaction. Now there can be exceptions, but overall it just doesn't seem to be true. It don't really seem to be true hypoallergenic dogs and cats. So that's all I got. I definitely learned a lot about this. I didn't really know hypoallergenic wasn't really real. Once I got into the data, I realized that it's true. I hope you guys learned something new. And as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll be back soon with another video.